Hey, Courtney. Thank you for joining us for That Spiritual Girl Next Door. Courtney actually lives in Savannah, and her TikTok and Instagram handle is Courtney in Savannah. I've never met her in person, but we live like 15 minutes down the road from each other. So we're joking that maybe we need to start a meetup called like The Woo and the 912 is what came to me. So maybe we can start a little community. But Courtney is a self-concept and manifestation coach, if that's kind of a layman's terms for people who haven't heard about self-concept. But I'm going to let her kick it off and tell us a little bit about herself. So Courtney, take it away.
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I feel honored that you wanted to speak with me today. And it is so cool that we live in the same town because I don't think I know anyone else who talks about the same concepts that I talk about that lives in Savannah. So I'm so glad that, we found each other and that we connected. And I'm so happy to be talking with you today. But about me, I am a self-concept manifestation coach, and I kind of just fell into it after working in healthcare for over 10 years. And I realized that I was doing something out of alignment with what felt like my purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of just started posting online just to kind of like tell my story and get my thoughts and my feelings kind of out there, kind of like a personal like diary for me. Just
It's so good and real. Yes.
Oh, thank you so much. And, it just kind of happened. I just felt like called to start posting on TikTok and then share all the concepts that I was learning and how I started implementing them and the crazy positive changes I was seeing in my own experience. And so, yeah, it just kind of happened that way. And over time, it became kind of who I am and what I do. And people started really resonating with what I was saying, which is crazy. I pinch myself all the time. And I always feel so honored when people tell me that my content has touched them or helped them or whatever. So yeah, I just kind of fell into it. But at the same time, I also feel like I'm doing what I was meant to do. And it feels purposeful for me and kind of like a calling, I guess. And so, yeah.
Are you still in healthcare, or is this now your full-time job?
No, I don't do healthcare anymore. I did occupational therapy for, I think, like 12 or 13 years. And I was doing both for a little while. For about 2 years, I was still doing healthcare and then doing the coaching stuff, content creator stuff on the side. And last year, actually, I decided to just go completely full time with this because it really lights me up. And I realized I've been holding on to the other stuff for so long and it was draining me and I couldn't do it anymore. I always loved working with people.
Right.
But the actual healthcare field itself and like the politics and I don't know, I just realized it was so out of alignment with my beliefs currently now and the way that the healthcare system is set up. I just couldn't do it anymore. So now I'm full time. Just with
so excited. Well, congratulations, because
Thank you.
that takes
Thank
a
you
lot
so
of, you're practicing what you preach, essentially, which is great.
I appreciate that. It took me longer, honestly, than it should have, just being like totally honest. I held on to it for a long time and I realized that I guess the reason I was doing that is because I had all these beliefs from growing up which is why I got into healthcare in the first place. It's not because I really wanted to do it. I always liked connecting with people, but the actual job itself was some kind of programming. You know what I mean? Like my parents saying, you need to have a steady job and you need to like do something secure and go in healthcare because you'll always have a job. And I was like, well, okay, I guess I'm just doing this.
Well, it's guaranteed. Yeah. They paid your check every few weeks and it feels good in that way. And so that's why. So her whole concept is there's nothing outside of yourself. Everything is a projection of you. And I'm going to let you I'm not going to, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but you're doing it. So if that healthcare job was an extension of you, it just was a reflection that you didn't want to necessarily see of yourself. You know what I mean? Like you wanted to refine that. And so you changed your self-concept and then you basically manifested this whole new career that feels in alignment with who you are.
Totally. Yes. And part of that process of letting it go was really kind of letting go of my old identity in a sense, because, looking back on the experience itself, that career, that job was so reflective of an old version of me. And so, your reality reflects you based on where you are at the time, because, we see the world through the lens of who we believe we are. And at that time that I started in healthcare, I believed all these limiting things about myself that, I needed to have a 9 to 5. I needed to have, those beliefs that a lot of people have around, you got to do what you hate just to survive.
You've got to hustle. You've got to be a worthy person. You have to work hard.
Exactly. And that was what was instilled in me as a child, honestly. Like, you got to kill yourself just to be worthy of having anything. You're not deserving of anything unless you hustle and grind and kill yourself. And I used to do that. And what's so funny about that is, on paper, I should have made a lot more money, but because I was so drained and hating what I was doing, actually, it never was the way that it should have been.
Right.
Monetarily, because like you said, it was so out of alignment with, it was like so draining for me. And I was always just exhausted and overworked. And, as we know, that's even like an energetic thing. If you're drained energetically, not only is your reality reflecting that, but your bank account's going to reflect that too, because money is energy.
Well, so I think a lot of people listening to you are going to say, well, how did you flip the switch? So the idea of changing your self-concept to me makes a ton of sense, but it's like, how do you, one, identify that you're the one? Like, to me, that's really hard to take responsibility. If there's something in your life you want to change, you really have no one to blame but yourself, because everyone wants to blame the external circumstance, correct? But how does someone get to the place mentally, and maybe this is how they find you, they're like, I'm tired of my own BS, right? And then they have to take responsibility that nothing is outside them, but then without shame. How do you take responsibility without blaming yourself?
Totally. And you know what? Because I think we all go through this, where we are the victim and it serves us until it doesn't anymore. And so, we've been taught to be so externally focused and to be victims and to be disempowered by our reality, as if life is just happening to us, but actually it's happening through you and from you. And so it does take radical self-accountability to look back on your experience. And it takes a certain level of awareness too. And it's not a hierarchy. It's not I'm ahead of anyone else. I used to be the biggest negative victim on earth who was always pointing the finger at everything outside of myself, right? And I think that's a journey that a lot of us go on. But it wasn't until, my reality, my life, my experience got to the point of being so uncomfortable. I was rock bottom in a way. I didn't have anyone else. I didn't have anything else. The only thing left for me to do was to look at myself. And what self-concept is, it's the beliefs that you have about who you are and how life works for you. It's how you conceptualize yourself. It's your belief system. So, how you view yourself and how you speak to yourself, all of that is wrapped up in self-concept. And so I did play the victim, and it served me until the moment that it no longer did. And like you said, I got so sick of myself and repeating patterns and being the same old person. And I realized, after repeating patterns with the same people, with different people, situations, circumstances, I was the common denominator. It was me. Like the Taylor Swift song, it's me. It's me, right? So like, that's what happened. And so at that point, that I could have the awareness to know, oh, this is coming from me. And the only way to break these patterns is to change within myself. And so how that started for me was, I guess, starting to view myself as almost like the child version of me who didn't know what they didn't know when all of those beliefs were formed. And so that really helped me with not self-blaming or shaming or judging myself for what I didn't know, when I didn't have the capacity to have the awareness to take accountability for myself. And so at the point that I did, I was able to have a lot of empathy for myself, but also it was such a catalyzing place to be in, rock bottom, with the ability to have the awareness and accountability, that I'm actually going to do what's necessary now to change my mind, rewire my beliefs and my nervous system. And I'm going to do it with consistency, and I'm going to follow through with myself, and I'm not going to give up on myself because I don't ever want to feel like this again. I don't want to repeat these patterns anymore. I'm done. So I'm going to make this permanent. I was ready. You know what I mean? So all of those things that pushed me towards getting there, I think it had to happen that way in order for me to have the awareness and the capacity to do the inner work, if that makes sense.
If people want to kind of understand this more, Neville Goddard is sort of the father of some of this concept, right? So that's a good place to start Googling other than your TikTok, because you just start scrolling and you get all the nuggets. Can you explain the law of assumption and some of the core beliefs behind it that you talk about?
Yeah. So, it's funny because when I found Neville Goddard's work, that is kind of like what put a lot of missing puzzle pieces together for me, in a sense, because I learned about everyone as you pushed out. I learned about the law of assumption, and the law of assumption is just simply whatever stories you're telling or whatever assumptions you have about yourself and your world or your experience, that is what your experience will reflect back to you. The world is a mirror, essentially. Everything and everyone as you pushed out, meaning they and it are always reflecting back to you what you assume to be true about you. It's proving your beliefs right to you. But the thing about beliefs is they're subjective and they're malleable. So if you have negative beliefs about yourself or the world or other people that aren't serving you, you don't have to believe them anymore. And you change yourself internally, meaning the stories you tell and the way that you believe about yourself, your outer world will reflect that back to you as well, if that makes sense.
And it's fun having friends that all believe these concepts, because we'll be like, stop, cancel. Like if you say a negative thought or have an assumption about the way that, like, okay, let's go to that restaurant. Oh, it's going to be crowded. Nope, cancel, stop. It's going to be perfect. We're going to go. We're going to get right in. And it's fun to play that game with each other. And I try to do it with my kids without, being annoying. But I'm like,
Totally.
if you think that birthday party is not going to be fun, it's probably not. If we can say, you know what, this is going to be a blast. We're going to have the best Saturday ever. It might be. It probably will be. So it's a fun game to start with. And then do you agree that if you so if people are listening and they're like, this isn't true, I don't believe it, yada, yada, start and just play the game. And then you'll start to prove it true. Like, do you have any cool stories of things that you were able to change, and how does that look in real time?
Yeah. So even just if you can look back on your life and if you can remember kind of like your inner dialogue or the assumptions that you had about a particular thing, like, I think this person likes me. I think this is my future husband. I think this girl's going to be my best friend, whatever, right? The things you convince yourself of, that's how things tend to play out. And so one thing that's kind of easy is just to look back on your experience and go, oh, wow, everything kind of played out because of the stories I was telling at that time. Yeah. So one of the major ones I look back on is, because especially in relationships, because relationships with other people are the direct mirror to your beliefs about yourself, right? And so, I used to tell stories because of my self-concept at the time, long time ago. I used to tell the story of my husband or that he treats me like chopped liver, which is really funny. And I would never tell that story now. But of course, he had to show up reflecting that back to me because that's what I believed about myself, how other people treated me in relationships.
That's how you were, like, your worth was not more than that. And that's what you were thinking.
Exactly. And so, yeah, that's how he showed up. But I started telling different stories about myself. And now he treats me like a princess. He dotes on me, right? And so it's just a different way that I view myself and value myself that other people now reflect back to me. And so that's kind of that inner work of just kind of like being more mindful and intentional about your self-talk and your inner dialogue, and not just blindly believing whatever your mind is trying to tell you, especially if it doesn't feel good. And so if it doesn't feel good, your body's trying to alert you that this is out of alignment with who you actually are because it feels bad. And so let's not buy into this about ourselves anymore. So now I'm going to choose a different story about me. But one of my favorite exercises to really prove this to yourself, that your world is always reflecting you, is to write some things down and make it fun and make it things that you don't really care about. So you get in like a really relaxed, sleepy, almost meditative state, which I feel like everyone can do easily. Think about how when you're falling asleep at night and or first waking up and you're just kind of in that like twilight state, your mind is really impressionable in that state. And so one of my favorite exercises for, proving this to yourself is to get into that state, write down like a list of 5 or 10 things that you intend to see show up in your life. So it could be little silly things that you have no resistance to. Like, I want to see someone wearing an outfit with all the colors of the rainbow. So it's remarkable. It's not something that you would see every day, but it's something that you don't really care about. So right. The first time I ever did this, I wrote down, that one about the rainbow outfit. I wrote down, I intend for someone to make me coffee. I intend for someone to play with my hair, silly little things that don't matter. And I wrote them down, and I wrote them in present tense as if they were already happening. Because your mind, if you're talking to your mind in future tense, it doesn't compute. It can't conceptualize that. So if you say like next week or next year, I'm going to do this, it's only right here, right now. So you write them in present tense, like I am seeing this. This is happening now, whatever. And I did that the first time I ever did it. I went to sleep. I forgot about it. And within 2 days, everything that I had written down on that list came to fruition. And some of them didn't happen the way that I thought that they would happen, but they happened.
Kind of the best part, right? And then I think that's a good practice that the universe, God, is going to deliver in ways that are unimaginable. And that's the coolest part and the magic of life. Yeah. Okay, I told Courtney this was going to happen. I got to let my dog in one moment. We're super professional here at the Spiritual Girl Next Door.
Oh,
okay, but I have a funny one that was manifestation, but not, maybe it's self-concept. Maybe it was validation that I'm powerful, right? I was at Jersey Mike's, the one on Whitmarsh. You've been there, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
And I get my sandwiches, my kids like the bread, I have all this stuff, and they put it in a bag. And their bags from the very first time, like 10 years ago I've ever been to Jersey Mike's, don't have handles. And they're like, they hand them to you, they tear, and I'm holding it like a baby. And I said to the guy, man, maybe one day you guys will get some bags with handles. And, not that I really care, but I just said it flippantly. And he's like, yeah, that would be nice. Maybe one day. The next day, no kidding, like 3 days later, I don't know why I was back that soon, but I was, they had bags with handles. And I said, no way. I said, I manifested this bag with handles. And she said, she just kind of laughed at me. And I said, no, really, like I've been a customer here for like 15 years and you've never had bags with handles. She goes, well, it's the only kind we can order now. And I'm like, of course it is. And that's so silly, but it's just a practice to notice them. Do you agree? Like if you just notice how powerful you are, then you can continue to do anything. Like specifically, you have workshops with your specific partner, money, things that really matter in people's lives, not the bag at Jersey Mike's. But tell us about what you do in those workshops and your one-on-ones. Like how do you coach someone through this?
Yeah. And you know what you said, it's so true. You did that. You totally did that. The bags.
And I believe it. It's not, a couple of years ago, I'd be like, I don't know. It's just in practice. But like that feeling you get when you're like, no, I know I did that.
Yep.
It's
cool.
And
maybe in the past you would go, that's just a coincidence. No, you did that. Mm-hmm. And so the more you prove it to yourself, the more you play around with the law, the more you will trust yourself, right? And part of, living this way with the awareness that you have is really trusting yourself and your own power. So you prove it to yourself over and over until you get it. It sinks in and then you can't unsee it. And so, even if something pops up that's unpreferable to you, that no matter what the circumstance is, I actually have creative control over this. So I don't have to let it bother me or be reactive to it because everything is just reflecting my internal state.
And I loved your analogy with the ice cream. I know you've repeated it so many times, but can you give us the ice cream analogy? Because so almost like they served me up that, and I hate to use this insignificant example, it's just simple. The bag. I'm like, no, I don't want a bag without handles. I'm tired of wrestling with it. I refuse that from the universe. So you can say I created that negative experience, but I don't have to stand for it. And to me, that's the hardest part because there's no shame in that bag that's tearing. And so Courtney's going to, I mean, you can give us the one with the ice cream is just so clear. So go ahead.
Thank you. I love that analogy. And it's so true because, if you can create or manifest all of these negative circumstances from a belief system that's out of alignment with who you are, right? All these negative limiting beliefs that people tend to have, if you can create from that, then you can create the opposite of that. And sometimes clarity comes through contrast. I say that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But, and a lot of it happens to give you the awareness that you have. And so, the ice cream thing, and I love that analogy because it is clear. But so say you go to the ice cream shop and you order, I think the analogy I used online was Superman ice cream. I don't even know if that's a real thing.
Yeah, it is. My kids love it.
Is it?
But okay. I don't want it, so I'd send it back.
Well, yeah. And so let's say you ordered cookies and cream and they give you vanilla. Well, it's the same thing in manifestation. You don't have to get upset about the fact that they gave you vanilla. You don't have to be reactive about it. You don't have to be afraid of it. You don't have to let it have power over you. You just simply send it back and you say, this is not what I prefer. And this is not what I ordered. So I'm going to send this back and I'm not going to let it emotionally affect me or have power over me. That would be the negative circumstance, right? Anything that's popping up that you don't prefer, like the bag without handles, you're not going to get upset about it. You're just going to say, well, I don't prefer this, so I'm not going to accept that. And now I'm only going to accept the version of reality where I have a bag with handles and I have cookies and cream ice cream. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what I'm talking about. And really, manifestation is not woo-woo. It's not out there. It's neuroscience. It's quantum physics. It's the way your mind works. What you focus on with your thoughts, which are just energy, you get more of. It's an algorithm. It's proving your beliefs and your inner dialogue and your mental state back to you always. It's proving you right. And so that's what can always be changed. You may have been programmed with a certain set of beliefs that you adopted from your parents, your teachers, society, XYZ, but you have the power to change that through doing something different, making a different choice, having a different inner dialogue. And so knowing that you have the power over that, it doesn't have the power over you. You don't have to get upset about anything that your world is showing you because now you have the discernment of choice to go, I'm no longer going to accept that for myself or believe that about myself. I'm going to choose something different because now I have the conscious choice. And that's all manifestation is. It's making the unseen seen, which is what our mind is always doing anyway. Mm-hmm. So now we're making it more preferable to ourselves.
What ages are your girls?
They are 8 and 6.
So I have a 9 and 6-year-old girls. I like to talk about parenting because it's obviously my day-to-day. I think the trick is exactly about the ice cream. So my daughter said that some kids at school made fun of her hair and how it was. And she's like, I liked it, but they hurt my feelings. And I don't want to invalidate her feelings, but I want her, I can't say, Conley, well, that's a reflection of you. You obviously weren't very confident about your hair that day. And they're reflecting that back. That sounds like I'm blaming her from a kid. So it's hard. So I think what you hit on in saying that it's not a big deal, or just don't take it so personally. Well, it is personal because if you're creating it, but I struggle with this where I don't want her to feel bad that she created this, but let her also know she doesn't have to stand for that victimhood. So how would you describe that to your girls?
Yeah. So, I'm so glad that you brought that up because you make an excellent point. I would never tell someone to invalidate their own feelings. Mm-hmm. Feel however you need to feel. It's just the meaning that you're giving the experience that matters because, you can feel upset or triggered or sad. Feelings are meant to be felt. That's part of the human experience. So I can feel sad or disappointed, or I can have my feelings hurt, but I also don't have to make that mean anything negative about myself. I don't have to turn that into a story about myself that makes me a victim or that is in line with anything that I don't actually prefer for myself. So that's the difference. You feel your feelings without putting a negative meaning on them. So if I feel sad today, or if I feel sad because of what someone just said to me, I'm going to let myself feel sad. I'm going to allow my kids to have their feelings. But then we're also going to talk about, what are you making this mean about yourself? Mm-hmm. Because, someone saying something to you doesn't automatically mean that there's something wrong with you, that you're unworthy, that you're not good enough. None of these feelings mean that. So you can have the feeling, but what story are you telling about yourself? That's what's making up your self-concept and your belief system about who you are and how the world works for you. So that's what, if anything, I would love to instill in my kids. Like, we're going to feel how we feel, but we're not going to tell a negative story about ourselves, because that's absolutely not true.
That's great. Yeah, that's a delicate dance between, like, for me, when if I see something in my life that is sometimes the mirror is hard. It's hard to look in that mirror, right? Because again, I keep going back to the shame. That was a big part for some reason. Like, sometimes I don't want to look in the mirror because I don't want to feel like I was responsible for it. Now I have to fix it. But I think you just hit the nail on the head with you're allowed to still feel emotions surrounding it, and they don't have to mean anything specifically about you.
I think too, like, and I try to remember this because we're not perfect. We are still human. There's the God part of us and there's the human part of us, right? And so, we're here to have a human experience, which is contrast, which is discomfort. It's the negative emotions and the positive ones. It's limitation and fear. And then coming to the awareness where we actually are unlimited and fear is an illusion. And so I think it's all part of it. Your kids have their own journey and their own experience that they signed up for, and they picked you to navigate that with them. And so, you don't have to be perfect. I think peace and presence are more important than perfection, because, we came here to have that full spectrum experience. And so, my husband and I talk about all the time, like, our kids are going to have some kind of limiting beliefs because we're not perfect. You know what I mean? But we're doing better for them now because we have more awareness than what we were taught. And so that's kind of the goal. And so, a lot of times though too, and I want to be sensitive because it's not like people say stuff to me online all the time, or what about children who are abused and things like that?
Or battling cancer. What does that mean that they've manifested?
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. And absolutely not. No one would consciously choose that for themselves. And a child is not causing their own suffering. It's not like that. It's more of, if you zoom out and you see it from a higher consciousness perspective, that is an experience that consciousness decided to have, to place limitations on itself or programming on itself, so that it could then come into the awareness of, none of this is true for me. And it's more about the journey, or even just the experience itself, because, I know this is really meta and out there probably for some people, but if we wanted to be blissed out and perfect, we wouldn't have incarnated into a human experience that is very imperfect, right? So I try to remember.
I mean, the schoolroom earth, as they call it, is like, apparently there's a line and everybody wants to experience it. And they're like, ooh, time. I want to see what time's like. I want to see what this whole, like, you got to be patient to make things appear thing is. And no, I don't, again, there's nothing out there that you could say. So just bring all the woo.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But, coming from someone who I experienced trauma and abuse in my own childhood. Mm-hmm. With parents who had their own trauma that had been passed down through generation. Like, I really believe we are the cycle breakers, or we started that chain of being the cycle breakers, and our children will continue that even further. Right. And so, like, I just always come back to, this is an experience of contrast. It's polarity. It's this and that. It's negative and positive. It's yin and yang. It's light and dark. We wouldn't know power without disempowerment. We wouldn't know joy without fear and suffering, right? And we wouldn't know compassion without all the negative things, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, that's all part of it. And ultimately, all of the things that we go through, they grow us. They make us evolve. They bring us back to ourselves. They bring us back to the truth. And so it's all part of the journey, I guess.
And that's why I feel like the self-concept work is so amazing, in that it helps you change your external circumstances how you would prefer, but you can't look at it like it's everything. So it's a tapestry, right? So your soul is choosing these experiences to expand maybe differently than what your conscious choices and your conscious self-concept. So it's all a package deal. They all work together. Nothing's end all be all. I think that's important to understand. So it's like you said, those, not a naysayer, but someone that's like, what about the people that are fighting, like the really hard, bad things? They're not consciously choosing that for themselves.
Right. Exactly.
I want to talk about nervous systems because I love that that's a part of sort of your training and what you would do, because you can't do any of this without a regulated nervous system. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Oh, yes.
So what are your practices to keep your nervous system in check?
It's funny because when I first got into all of this, I was trying to do everything mentally, and it works to a point, and I realized the mental stuff will only take you so far. You can't think your way out of a limiting belief or a fear. You're bypassing your physical experience. And what I realized through my own work and my own experience, and now what I work on with my clients, is we're here having a physical experience in our body, and most people are so disconnected from themselves because they're so in their head. They're not in the present moment. They're not in their body. They're disassociated because they're so out of balance with overthinking. They're thinking more from the past or into the future, and they're missing the present moment. Because to me, having a regulated nervous system is self-connection. It's being in the body. That's all the same thing. So when you have a baseline of regulation within your nervous system, you're able to be more present. It sets you free because a regulated nervous system is power. And when you are dysregulated and dominantly in fear, meaning your nervous system is in fight or flight and you're always in your head, then you can't connect with what your body's trying to tell you. You don't have that self-connection. You don't have that presence. And so when you get into nervous system healing and somatic work, it's so empowering because it allows you to have that conscious discernment of choice, like I talked about before, where you are now calm enough and non-reactive enough to have more discernment on, am I going to buy into what my reality is showing me just because that's what has always been there? And am I going to comply with whatever's right in front of me, especially if it's fearful? If I'm dysregulated, then yeah, it takes your choice. It takes your conscious power away. But when, on the flip side of that, when you're regulated and you are calm and that's your baseline, you have a connection not only with your mind, but also with your body, because that's what this experience is. You're more in balance and you're more in power. And now I can say, actually, I'm not going to believe that stuff about myself anymore. And I'm going to choose something different, which becomes so much easier when your nervous system is regulated. So my favorite practices are somatic shaking, EFT tapping. There's so many different ones. There's hip opening stretches. There's so many different things. I mean, anything that's bringing you out of the overthinking, the ruminating thoughts, the imbalance of being too much in your head, and bringing your awareness, meaning just your focus, like your thoughts, your mind. It's bringing your attention back onto your body. So it could be as simple as tapping your wrist, and now I'm interrupting the thought that I was thinking, and now my attention is on how this is feeling on my wrist, right? It could be anything. It's so simple. It's just continuing to come back to yourself and come back to the moment and come back to your body with consistency. It's a practice until it becomes your baseline state of being, if that makes sense.
It definitely makes sense.
All the other stuff gets so much easier.
And I think it's so cool, these other ways to get into your body that you're offering, because so many people would just say meditation, right? And then a lot of people are like, that's just not for me. I'll be honest, that for some reason, that phrase, and I've got to figure out what that limiting belief is, has been really triggering for me when I like offer this, like, what about this? Or this is an interesting experience. And they come back with, oh, that's just not my thing. That's not for me. And I'm like, oh my God, you have no idea. You've never even tried it. But anyway, that's a side note. That's like a thing for me lately. I don't know. I'm like, okay, I should just be like, okay, fine. But meditation, if that's not for you and you've tried it, then maybe try some of these other embodied sort of exercises. And I think maybe some people don't even know the difference of being regulated versus just, because it's all the society, it's go, 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 flight or flight. And fight or flight is just people's default. So they've learned to stuff it down where they can operate. And once you actually get into that space where you can feel the difference, you never want to go back.
Oh my God, it's such a game changer. I always say nervous system regulation is the bridge from fear to power. It really is. It will set you free. It will take you from such a chaotic inner world to a life of peace. Literally, I have experienced both sides of that. I was the person in the past who was in constant dysregulation. That was my baseline state of being. I didn't even know how dysregulated I was. I didn't know that I could feel any different. I didn't know that anything different even existed. I didn't know how much calmer and at peace I could be. I didn't know how much better I could feel. I didn't even know what that was. I was just exhausted and drained and constantly on the go, and I had no boundaries, and I didn't know how to relax. And so, yeah, my nervous system was disrupted all the time, 24/7. And so when I started learning about nervous system regulation and somatic practice, and because we release limiting beliefs and fear through our body, that's why the mental stuff will only take you so far. You have to tap into your body. Your body's so intertwined with your subconscious, and your subconscious is where all these programs and beliefs are stored. And so you really have to, that's part of the self-concept journey, is coming back to yourself. And part of that is connection to self, which is connection to the body, right? And so, you can release things that your body has been holding on to for years that you didn't even know were there. And it's just a better feeling way to navigate your experience, is to have that connection with yourself, because your body's always trying to give you cues. It's your emotional guidance system. That's what Abraham Hicks would say. It's your GPS. It's always giving you alerts. Like, think about how when a trigger comes up for you, or a fear or whatever, you feel a reaction in your body. Most people feel it on their chest, like a heaviness, a gut feeling that feels terrible. That's that anxious feeling. Your body's trying to tell you something. It's telling you, hey, you've bought into something that's not true for you. That's why it feels so bad. And so, but if you don't have connection to yourself, you can't hear those cues. You don't have that discernment. So when you're constantly dysregulated, you can't even tap into that. So not only is nervous system regulation helpful in that way, that it makes you feel better, it gives you more peace, it also gives you such a connection with your own intuition and the cues that your body's constantly telling you, that I'm going to follow what feels good, because that's actually more in line with who I really am. Those loving, empowering, uplifting, limitless thoughts or feelings, that's in line with who I am, which is why they feel the way they do. And the ones that feel dark and heavy and dense and icky, those are so misaligned with who you really are, which is why you get that feeling in your body. Does that make any sense?
100%. And then just taking the time and even when we say processing, I think it's important to understand that doesn't mean you have to work it all out in your head. Like I said, I wonder what my trigger and limiting belief is. I mean, ultimately, for the empaths out there, it might be that the idea of that's not for me feels so disempowered and icky. Like, I can feel what that would feel like in my body. And I'm like, no, I don't even like that.
Putting limitation on themselves, which doesn't actually, that's not even a thing. So that's why that feels bad to you, because your body's telling you,
I used to be in a box. Like, I get it. And I think that's it. I'm like, do not put me back in that box. I can't imagine. It's just, no, everything is, as cheesy as it sounds, literally everything is possible.
Yeah. No, it's not cheesy at all. And when you have the awareness to see that, and that, you can't, when you see it, you can't unsee it. There's no going back.
Well, I'm like, where we joke about how everything's possible, and you want to be the parent that tells your kid that you can do anything. And I'm like, well, my littlest is like 20 percentile for height. And I'm like, you're probably not going to be a basketball player, like joking in my head. But I'm thinking, if she wanted to be a basketball player, I really believe she could be. You know what I mean? Like, it does. If you want to be a singer, and right now that just doesn't seem like your forte, I think you could step into that timeline and that power if you really wanted to be a singer.
Absolutely. And you know what? I talk about this too, like online. If you have like a heart's desire that has been put on you, or that has come to you, and it's something that you keep going back to and it keeps coming up for you, it's because there's a future version of you who is already experiencing that, and you are being led towards that. And so the releasing of the limiting beliefs on the journey to getting there is all part of the experience. And that's kind of what we're here doing.
And to go back to nervous system regulation, I do want to do a little asterisk that says, if SSRIs or medicine helps you calm your nervous system to get to that place where now you can process these big feelings, that's good too. I resisted those for so long, and I tried certain ones to help me with my anxiety, and it was not a good fit, but have settled on something that's very mild. And I always just say, like, my boost bar gives me a minute to take a beat, and that's all I need. So now it's not doing the work for me. It allows me to not be so reactive.
Yeah.
and it's not numbing me out. Like, it's just being aware and using the tools that present themselves that work for you. There's nothing's off the table.
Absolutely. And there's no judgment. And everyone's bridge, I don't know if people that listen to you know about the bridge of events. That's a Neville Goddard thing, or bridge of incidents. He talks about that. How when you decide that something is yours, when you decide I'm going to consciously manifest this thing, and you don't have to do a million affirmations, you don't have to visualize 20 or 30 times. You can literally just decide, that's mine. I'm doing that. I am this. I have this right here, right now. Because once again, all we experience is the infinite right now, this moment.
Mm-hmm.
That's how your mind works. And time is something that humans have constructed, but it's not linear. We only experience right now. So when you decide, this is mine, I have this, I feel this way, I am this now, the movement of the bridge of the puzzle pieces coming together to get you to that thing is going to be unique to you and the situation. And your mind is going to bring you the most organic, believable path of least resistance way for you to get there, which you might not have consciously come up with on your own. So we don't know the when, we don't know the how it comes together. Our subconscious mind, our higher intelligence is 10 times ahead of us, 10 steps ahead of us. And so, we just have to make the choice and let it play out. And so the bridge to you feeling better might be through some sort of medication. A bridge to someone having better eyesight might be through LASIK instead of just an overnight healing within your mind. You know what I mean?
You don't have to go to Joe Dispenza. You can get LASIK, and
Right.
whatever it is, it's a permission slip to get you there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't have to put conditions on yourself. There's no judgment. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that is so freeing that it doesn't the lack of judgment and shame, again, is part of what you're setting yourself free from. And so it shouldn't be counterproductive there. That's, like, to me, the biggest takeaway with this, because it's easy to fall into that, like, well, if I'm doing this to myself, and then you go back to the victim. No. It's not like that.
Exactly.
All right. Do you have any cool, like, exercises or practical how-tos I think we talked in the beginning of the conversation a little bit, but do you have any other ones you want to share?
As far as nervous system regulation
Or self-concept, anything like that you talk about with the different concepts?
I mean, honestly, if I were to give someone a recommendation for, how to kind of get into this, I always would say start with nervous system regulation. Okay. Because it makes all the other things, the conscious manifestation stuff, the changing the stories, the deciding what you want, the taking your power back, all those things. It makes all of that so much easier because it takes the fear and urgency element out, and it allows you to have a higher perspective, a more empowered point of view, where if I'm no longer in fear, now I have the conscious choice. So I can do whatever I want. I can have whatever I want. I can choose whatever I want. But maybe I didn't believe that before because I was so much in fear. So always, to me, the top priority, if someone is just getting into this, or they feel that, something is not possible for them, or they have a lot of skepticism around this, or they find themselves in a dominant state of dysregulation, start there, because that is giving you the gift of self-connection. And self-connection is empowering because everything that you desire is in the present moment. And that's what nervous system regulation and self-connection are giving you. They're taking you out of the past and the future and bringing you right now. And it's giving you more of a connection and an intuition to be open to anything that's going to come up that's going to lead you towards what you're intending for, if that makes sense. So if you are calmer, you're automatically more empowered. You're automatically less reactive. You can slow down and listen to those intuitive cues and those intuitive hits that you get that are going to lead you on the path of what you're asking for. And it makes everything so much easier. And not only that, you feel better.
So if I was like, okay, I'm all in, Courtney, I want to regulate my nervous system. Like, what should I do when I wake up in the morning? What would be something I could try that's easy?
Yeah. So I don't know if you've heard of somatic shaking, but that's my favorite one.
Okay. So that would be just a YouTube video you look up or do you have something on your website?
I don't, but there's tons of videos on TikTok. There's tons of videos online, and it's not anything complicated. It's literally just shaking your body all over for like 30 to 60 seconds. It's actually kind of fun. And I love that one because it's fast and it's effective. If you find yourself ruminating, you're out of balance. You're too much in your head. You need to interrupt it and come back to your body, because what that's doing is it's breaking those old thought patterns down. And the thought patterns come from the belief system. You're breaking the belief system down and you're releasing those limiting beliefs by, instead of trying to think your way out or letting that cycle perpetuate in your mind, you're doing something different, which is getting you a different outcome. So you're creating new neural networks in your mind and you're training your body into regulation, which is power. So let's say you get up in the morning, the first thing you do is you do 30 to 60 seconds of somatic shaking. And it's just, like I said, shaking all over. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's not complicated. Okay. And then maybe 2 hours later, and 2 hours intervals throughout the day, I'm going to do 60 seconds of shaking, even if there's no trigger present, because what I'm doing is I am putting my body into a baseline state of calmness. And so for 3 days straight, maybe I'm doing the shaking on 2 hour intervals from when I first wake up to when I go to bed at night, just for 3 days. After 3 days, you will feel so much better. You will have released a lot of stuff that's in your body that you've been holding on to that maybe you weren't aware of. And then you can start implementing some other things, such as maybe I'm going to start doing self-focused affirmations and just do maybe like 10 short, simple ones first thing in the morning and before I go to bed at night. So to me, like, that is a good system that is manageable. It's easy to stick to because it's just the consistency that makes the change.
I think that's great. And then no one out there say shaking isn't for me because you hadn't tried it yet.
You know, I used to do more EFT tapping, and when I learned about somatic shaking, don't get me wrong, I love EFT tapping, but sometimes it can feel a little overwhelming and complicated because you have to know like
which point
points, and you do affirmations with it. But that's why I love shaking, because it's so quick and easy and effective. And it's funny because when I was still at my healthcare job, I used to get out of my desk and go to the back of the room and shake, and they would make fun of me, my coworkers. And I'm like, I do not care. I'm doing what I need to do for myself. I'm calming down, and I just had no shame about it.
It's sort of like a stim in a way. Like if you're autistic and they know what they're doing. They're getting the energy out. And if you watch a dog, my dog, if we're on a walk and he meets another dog and you can see his hackles are up, he's a little anxious. He shakes right away, and it's like it resets.
Yeah.
And if you I think the dog shaking analogy, like if that, they innately do that.
Yes, they do it intuitively. I saw another creator on TikTok talk about that just the other day, how animals are so in tune. And when they experience something traumatic, like something that puts them in fight or flight, because we're not meant to live in fight or flight. We're meant to live in parasympathetic response, which is when you're calm, when you're digesting, when you're sleeping, when you're at peace. That's supposed to be our dominant state of being. We're only supposed to activate fight or flight when we're being chased by a bear. But most people are living in fight or flight. Animals do this naturally. They'll experience a traumatic event where maybe they were chased and they survived, and they will shake it out. They will get that energy out of their body, and then they're back to baseline. But humans, we've lost that somewhere along the way, right? So what it does, though, is it gives you back that connection to yourself, and you'll just do it automatically. You'll feel better. You'll live your life in parasympathetic as opposed to in fight or flight. So yeah, exactly.
I love that. Okay, well, I'm going to try it and I'll report back to you because it sounds good. I mean, it sounds like it feels good too. You can't
It does.
deny.
I love it. I do it all the time.
And then you can almost make it a dance party with your kids. And we have the quintessential reset button here. It's a metaphorical button that we hit when we're all in a little crabby mood and somebody's yang each other. I think that's my Macon, Georgia phrase, yang. And then, I'm like, all right, instead of reset button, we should probably all just shake it out a little bit. And the 9-year-old's going to look at me like I'm crazy. But if you just make it normal, it'll be fun.
I have my kids do it too. And we do the shaking. We do breathing. We will sit down and like calm down, and we'll have dance parties. So yeah, like you're doing your kids such a service by teaching them that resource, because, that's not something that I grew up having or knowing. So hopefully, our kids will be able to have a better experience, have a more intuitive connection with themselves because of that.
Well, and that's why I want to talk about it here is some people haven't even heard about these. Like you said, it's not like our generation's parents were listening to podcasts and on YouTube and sharing these kind of ideas. So that's kind of one of the impetuses for that. So I love that. All right, Last little thing I want to talk about, and I don't want to get in the weeds with it, but I overcomplicate this. But I need some clarity on how co-creation works. So if you are a reflection of me right now because I'm looking at you through my lens, but then I'm a reflection of you because you're looking at me through your lens, how do we co-create together? Where's the overlap? Maybe a family is a better analogy, because my husband, if he's manifesting things in the house, is it his manifestation? Is it mine? How do you discern who's the one that maybe needs a little self-concept tune-up?
Well, here's the thing. So I don't really subscribe to the co-creation thing, and I'll tell you why. Just from what I have experienced, you're the only thinker in your reality. Everyone is reflecting you. So even all the people that you perceive outside of you are still reflecting you. So you're the only one who manifests in your reality. So even though we're all one thing, I like to use the disco ball analogy. We are all one consciousness. We are all one thing. There's no separateness between any of us because we're all one consciousness, but we are all having our own individual experiences. So it's like a disco ball, meaning there's infinite facets and faces on the disco ball that make up the whole, but each individual facet, they don't touch each other. They don't interrupt or intertwine with each other, yet they're all still part of the one big thing. So the way that I conceptualize that is, if you think about a video game, we're going into the arcade and I'm strapped into my video game and you're right beside me in another chair strapped into yours. I'm only playing my game. I can't see yours. You're only playing yours. You can't see mine. The two things don't overlap, even though we're in the same room and we're right beside each other and we're connected, if that makes sense. I'm having my experience that I am limitless in. I can have anything that I desire, and so can you, because we're not manifesting on top of each other. There's no competition. There's no overlap, if that makes sense. So we're all existing at once, but we're all having our own experience, if that makes any sense. And so
it does. And you know what helps too, to think about how you talk a little bit about your SPs, and people are so curious, if you are manifesting your specific person, how are they feeling as you're manifesting them? Like, you don't have to worry that you're being like manipulated in someone else's manifestation, because you're strapped into your own VR with, okay, yeah, that helps a lot.
Yeah. So you're the only one doing things. Because if you think about it, you only experience your own thoughts, and everything outside of you and your reality is reflecting your thoughts alone. That's what it means to be the only thinker. So if you think about it, you know, people get all up in arms about the no free will thing on the online space. But if you think about how, if I can affect how someone shows up for me, if they can literally parrot back to me the dialogue within my mind, then they've never had free will in my reality in the first place. This has always been happening. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to affect them in any way at all, right?
But they have free will in their reality, so it doesn't matter.
They do, but they're in their own experience, which I am not a part of. I don't have awareness of or access to their reality where they're the only thinker. So it's funny, I joke all the time, like, I have no idea what my husband is doing in his reality, but in my reality, he is my husband, right? And this is the role that he's playing for me. We might not even know each other in his reality, right? Because the two things don't overlap. So he's having his experience. This is why. And if you think about it too, if we were co-creating, and I'm not trying to debunk you or anything like that.
No, you're not. I'm just curious on the whole concept. No.
Yeah, like if it was a co-creation thing, and then we wouldn't really be limitless. Then we wouldn't be able to have what we want. Because if we were co-creating and there would be competition, but there is no competition. Then we would be competing and manifesting on top of each other, but we're not. Everyone's having their own individual experience. So if I wanted to be with Chris Hemsworth in my reality, that's possible for me. And if you wanted to be with him in your reality, that's possible for you, because we're all having our own experience. That is part of one big thing, but I'm just strapped into my game and you're strapped into yours, if that makes sense.
That does. And I've never thought of it in that exact way, how I can feel the picture of it now. So that is so cool.
You're never manipulating other people. You're never taking away their free will. They never had it in the first place, because in your reality, they are always and have always been reflecting you as the only thinker. You're the only one manifesting. So, you know, if this is something we've always been doing and it's always happening anyway, let's make it more preferable to us, because if you're manipulating or changing anything, it's only your own mind, because that's what you have creative control over. That's what you're always working with, and everything's reflecting that. So you're never doing anything to another person other than yourself.
I like when you say, okay, so when you say they've never had free will in the first place in your reality, but don't worry about their soul. Don't worry about the person you love because they have their own free will in their reality. And that's all
Yes,
that matters.
exactly. Exactly.
Okay, that's really cool. This is Matrix stuff. Like
Yeah.
literally, we're playing. So I love it.
I know it can be really meta and really people have pushback about this at first, but I implore you to test it out. Test it for yourself. Look at your experience and see how people have always been showing up with the stories you've been telling from how you view the world, which is through the lens of yourself, your
And
belief.
and in roles that you needed them to be in at that time, good or bad. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Based on your belief system about yourself, which is not something to blame or judge yourself for when you didn't know that that was happening. But now that you know, you can make it more preferable to you. You can tell better stories about yourself and other people, and they have to show up reflecting that too.
Okay, so last question is if somebody said, well, this whole thing sounds so egotistical and so like me, what do you say in response to that? I mean, because the answer is, yeah, it is. But
So your reality is centered around you anyway. You are the main character. You should be selfish or self-focused because that's what your reality is. But when you are operating at your highest expression of who you really are, which is pure unconditional love and non-judgment, but also self-focused, then you're always just going to come from love anyway. It's not a negatively connotated thing. Society would tell you that being self-focused is selfish only because that's part of the programming that you signed up for to disempower and limit yourself, right?
yeah,
It's playing the opposite game of what you've been taught because when you do that, you come into your full power. And really, if you think about, because a lot of people like to, kind of say, well, being selfish is negative or self-focused is negative. But when you put yourself last, you're not helping anyone anyway. You can't get poor enough, sick enough, others focused enough to ever help anyone outside of you because your reality is only you. So you elevating yourself, you focusing on yourself, you working on yourself is the only way to help other people,
and that's
honestly.
so much more beautiful than just the oxygen mask
Yeah,
analogy. Like that works, sure, but people, you put yours on before someone, but way you explain it, it's greater than that. You
I
know?
appreciate that. I think about it that way too, though. Like, if you've depleted yourself to the point of detriment, not only are you hurting yourself, you're also hurting all the people that you wanted to help in the first place. So everything really is an inside job because everything is reflecting you. So it should be all about you, not in an egotistical, narcissistic way, in a way that's just coming from who you truly are.
And like, how dare you not, is I think one
Yeah,
way somebody put it. Like it's your prerogative to make yourself the best and highest that you can. And
exactly.
then you can live a life of service in that way versus live a life of service, like to your point, get at your detriment. That doesn't make any sense.
Totally, totally. You can't pour from an empty cup. You can't deplete yourself and expect it to positively affect anyone. It's not going to. And I actually, speaking of this, I kind of learned that the hard way when I first started coaching because I was depleting myself. I was constantly jumping in to fix and save and heal and help everyone else. And at some point, I realized I was angry and resentful because I had abandoned myself. I had depleted myself in service to everyone else, and they were not actually getting results. They were using me as a crutch because I was not focusing on me. I wasn't working on me. I wasn't doing my own work. So how could they do theirs? So the only way my clients are going to get results and help or for me to help them or for them to get what they need is for me to be doing my own work always. So I need to have strong boundaries. I need to not deplete myself. I need to not jump in and fix because if I'm not doing my work, they can't do theirs. It really is a mirror.
And then you're not creating in your reality the right coaching clients in a sense.
Yeah.
Like if you really want to take that analogy all the way, you're going to create clients that are helpable now
Yeah,
because you believe you can.
exactly. Exactly.
Well, thank you, Court. I think this is so much to think about, and it is so fun to talk about. And
Oh my goodness. Thank you. I could talk about it all day
let's
long.
go get coffee. And I mean,
Yes.
I was gonna say like at first, like let's co-create some, but you know what? You're gonna, you know what I mean, in terms of like let's just create a community around this and find more people that want to just like geek out on the Matrix. I love it.
I completely agree. Thank you so much for having me. This has been a really fun conversation and I love it. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, this isn't goodbye. We'll talk again soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.